其實好多朋友都知道 Aural 3D 可以話係音質最貴氣、最有音樂感嘅環繞格式，但係究竟呢個 Aural 3D 係點嚟嘅呢？呢日我哋就親自請到呢一個 Aural 3D 嘅創辦人 Wilfred 嚟香港過境嘅時候，捉咗佢同大家分享一下，聽下呢位既係音樂家又係音響工程師，仲喺比利時擁有自家 Galaxy Studio 嘅音樂藝術家，究竟點解會開創一個歐洲人引以為傲嘅音效格式先啦！
First of all, I'm a professional musician, as well audio engineer, so I created my own albums, did for others as one, built a studio, very known, Galaxy Studios, and I was always interested by, let's say, bringing a better experience. How can we improve the emotional experience in such a way what you hear like live in a concert or like you hear from musicians or like and even in sports, yeah? How can you bring that emotional experience to the consumer format, yeah? And I was studying, of course, let's say what we had like stereo, we had like quadraphonic sound, yeah? And suddenly I realized in 2005 that we were missing height. And I was very impressed about what height is doing for our brain and the overall emotional experience, yeah? And then I did a lot of tests and I was more and more passionate about, let's say, this is the future of sound. Future of sound is adding height, is creating a real three-dimensional sound. Yeah? Surround sound is only a two-dimensional format, having the speakers in a horizontal plane around us. It's creating that, let's say, that height is for our brain so much more important to have, let's say, that more natural three-dimensional experience, the way that you experience sound every day in your life. Yeah? And the question is, of course, how can we bring that in the most efficient way to the consumers, to everywhere, to everyone? And in fact, that was the idea of Aural 3D. So now the character of Aural 3D is, you can summarize it in a few words. It's giving the most natural immersive sound in the most efficient way. Because people very often think that the more speakers we have around us, the more natural the sound becomes. It's not true. At a certain moment, the more speakers you have, you introduce a new problem. That's related to the distance between the speakers. There's a comp filtering that has to do with the relationship that sound and distance has. Yeah? So the more speakers you introduce, the more comp filtering, that's an issue, the more colorization of the sound you have. And that's not good, because our brain is very sensitive for the original harmonics, for the original sound. So the art to create a three-dimensional sound illusion, yeah, has to do in the most efficient way. And that, I think, is one of the most, let's say, characteristics. People very often translate it in like, this is the most musical format in the market, yeah? And that's true. It is like music is very important, is the color of the sound and how you, let's say, get the emotional experience. It's, let's say, that emotional experience which is much more, let's say, immersive, yeah, natural immersive compared to our competitors' format. Of course, it is a challenge to bring such a new three-dimensional format to the market. If you see, it takes generation before a new format is in the market. Going from stereo to surround, it took like 20, 30 years, yeah? Even from mono to stereo, it took like 30 years, yeah? So the question is now, okay, how can we bring such a format in the market, yeah? And typically people think immediately about movie industry, yeah? Because typically a new format is coming from the movie industry first, yeah? But it can be done for music, it can be done for sports. If you have like the football and a sports game, if you see it in three-dimensional sound, you feel like you're in the stadium yourself, yeah? So this is a completely new thing. So, but we have to start somewhere, yeah? And typically you start first in the cinema industry. That's where we started as well. So we went to the, let's say, main players in the cinema industry, like George Lucas, the director from Star Wars, yeah? Like Jeffrey Katzenberg, DreamHack Animations, and Skywalker Sound. Those people were immediately so impressed about this new experience. And they embraced immediately the format. So we came very fast, let's say, in the cinema market, professional cinema market. And then the question was how to bring it then further into the consumer market. So in 2014 we came in at the CES with the first device that could reproduce three-dimensional sound at home. Yeah? And then of course there were other companies who were, let's say, like Denon, they were like very, let's say, keen to bring this experience as well to the consumer market. Yeah? And that, I think, is a major thing forward. They brought very immediately this available for a huge market. And now the format is everywhere. We are, let's say, not only in cinema, we are in home cinema, even in cars. Porsche, for instance, have it now in their cars. Yeah? Even here in China, Geely has it in their cars. So you see the brand is coming now, spreading out everywhere. Yeah. Often people ask me about the DTS compressor, why is it needed? Yeah. You know, let's say the way our 3D works, we have, let's say, that natural vertical stereo field around us, but our technology allows to bring those two layers together in one single 5.1 layer. That is the distribution, and we can bring that layer completely artistically downmixed in a 5.1. So that 5.1 can be heard by everyone, yeah? Even without a decoder you hear it because it's natural, uncompressed audio. That's the quality we have in our 5.1, but our decoder can reveal out of that format the original 3D mix without any kind of loss of audio quality, yeah? So the reason why we use now sometimes a lossless compressor on top of that is because we do not need any extra bandwidth. That's the difference with our competitors. They need to bring three-dimensional sound. They use it with a different technology that requires more bandwidth. Yeah? We do not have that. We do everything in the existing bandwidth of a 5.1. And you can further lossless compress it with, let's say, for instance, a DTS compressor. Now the advantage of that is that, of course, we can have the same languages in one physical media package like a Blu-ray than they are used to have, because let's say they have to be as much as possible languages sometimes in one format. So with our format there is not any kind of, let's say, thing that they have to change. We do not change any specs. We do not have any kind of, let's say, things that has to be changed to the original one. Yeah, the Auro 3D Up mixer, we call it Auromatic, yeah, is very, let's say, it became very known. Yeah, Auromatic means in fact automatically making from every kind of source an Auro 3D experience. And in fact, why did it invent it? Is it the following: when in Auro, let's say, when I invented Auro 3D in 2005, there was no technology ready at that moment. It was only the concept of the format, the speaker layouts, and how to bring in the most efficient way this format. Yeah. But I felt many times when you bring a new format into the market, in the beginning you have always this lack of content. There's always like, yeah, the chicken and egg, we call it, yeah. In the beginning you have the hardware devices and then there's no software of content, and if you go to the content makers, they said, yeah, how many installs do you have in the market? So you have to overwin that. So I thought, if I have a technology that can convert from existing mono or stereo or 5.1 and bringing already an enhanced experience, yeah, then it will, of course, motivate people to install immediately such a system, not looking into the kind of content. So how can we bridge the lack of content? That was in fact the original idea. And then I started to dive in that one. And that was very challenging. I tell you, I was 7 years working with 2-3 top specialists in the world about trying to find the right way to do this conversion. Because as a content creator myself, I found very important, let's say, the artistic intent is preserved. So the way it is being made, or this, let's say, originally in stereo, yeah, the kind of reverb, the kind of balance, that should be exactly the same when you put it in a three-dimensional sound format. And due to that effort that we did, and we are still working on it. Now we are more than 12 years busy already in Auromatic now, yeah, and we are still improving it. You can imagine, yeah, it is so complex. There are in total 54 different parameters that we adjust to create that experience. And I tell you what, the product is so strong that many times that people even say, we love the Auromatic starting from a 5.1 even more than an original native format from our competitors. Yeah, so it is a very strong, let's say, it's a very strong application, and not only for music, as well for movies or for gaming, or in cars it's fantastic, yeah, even on the radio. So it's the application of that format of, let's say, that technology, and it is very, very strong. It is very loved by a lot of people. Yeah, I see often, let's say, the comment from Auro 3D is the perfect format for music, yeah. But it's not only for music, it's about natural immersive sound. You have it everywhere. As I told you, you can have it in movies, you have that in sports, you have that in everything, yeah. So let's say it can be applied everywhere, yeah. So gaming is fantastic as well, yeah. Now we have to understand very well how content is created. That's a very important one, yeah. So as an engineer in broadcast, in music, as well in movies, I did all this kind of stuff, yeah. I started to understand very well the workflow in a whole, the content creation. And you have in content, typically you have 3 different kind of aspects. You have like recording, Yeah, you're trying to capture the environment. You have the mixing, that all these objects around you are going to create in a format that you can bring to, let's say, to the consumers, or to, let's say, even professional, or let's say, or home formats. It doesn't matter. Yeah, and then as well the mastering. And mastering is something which a lot of people are not aware about. But typically, when you create a master in a professional world, that's not the kind of consumer format you have at home. Yeah? And that is the first thing it's the first place where, let's say, that translation to the consumer format happens. But that's the last phase where artistic freedom is being done, that you can still improve the sound. Now, in the beginning, mastering was only, let's say, to try to create just like the vinyl, yeah, putting it on the master vinyl or like on a CD, but it became as well something artistically very important. In pop music industry, they use it mainly to blend all the sounds more, to bring in more that glossy sound over it, and they're like mastering top specialists. They even can improve the overall experience that a top sound engineer is creating. It's a different aspect, yeah. Now, what is very important is Auro 3D is the only immersive sound format on the market that can maintain that traditional mastering process. Our competitors can't. And especially for high resolution audio. We can do 96 kilohertz on a standard Blu-ray disc. Yeah? Our competitors can't. So, and that's because 96 kilohertz is the main standard in the meantime for music. Yeah? Already since a few years, most of the music is produced in that way. So that people think, oh, it's more a natural format, a natural choice is Auro 3D for music, of course. Yeah? But there's much more than that, because it's not, if what works for music is absolutely working as well for the rest of the world. So that counts for music, but the same confusion is happening now as well with object-based and channel-based sound. Yeah? I hear so many wrong statements about our competitors. They make people believe that with object-based sound you can position sounds better in space, because they have metadata, which is in the rendering is positioning it that depending on the speaker layout. But that's not the way our hearing system works. You know, in the vertical axis, our hearing system is completely different than in the horizontal axis. We don't have an ear on the top of our head to capture the vertical time differences. Yeah? So you can easily hear sounds going around like that, but sounds going up like that between two speakers, it's not possible. Yeah, if you turn your head like that, then you hear it going up. But like that, typically it jumps from one to another one. Yeah? So in the vertical axis, they are a completely different law. And the vertical axis is very sensitive about, let's say, the angles. The moment the angle is a little bit too big, yeah, like let's say above 40 degrees, yeah, then you're losing the coherence. Suddenly, there's like, let's say, there is no coherence anymore. So that means even if a natural sound is captured, our brain, if you reproduce it, it hears like two different things. It cannot make a phantom image like we are used to hear that in a horizontal plane. You know, in a horizontal plane, you can have sounds between two speakers in stereo. You can have sounds traveling, and you can even position sounds where there's not a speaker. So that's the reason why we call it the phantom image. Yeah? That phantom image doesn't exist in the vertical axis, just to the fact that we cannot, let's say, capture this vertical time difference in the same way. So that's the reason why we came out with, let's say, specific speaker layouts, yeah, and very easy to install. Our speaker layouts can be just hanging on the walls. You don't have to build them overhead. Immersive sound is not coming from above your head. Immersive sound mainly exists where our, let's say, our hearing system is more sensitive. That's between ear level and about 20, 25, 30 degrees. That's where most source sounds and their reflections are happening. Now, those reflections are so important, because natural sound, if you hear me talking now, more than 60–70% from what you hear in the room is not my sound. Yeah? So these reflections are very important. And in object-based technology, the objects are just monosources. They don't contain these three-dimensional reflections. So that becomes a very unnatural thing. And the metadata, which is trying to render it, it depends on the speaker layout. Because even the renderer, the computer itself, even says it should be there, you can just not create that with, let's say, with a phantom image between two speakers. Yeah? So the whole thing that it is creating much more positional information is not right. I tell you the thing. If you have the original objects and you can have the original 3D reflections captured and reproduce it, yeah, you have a much better representation, not only from the sound, the location as well. So we can, in the right way, and that's the thing with Auro. With Auro, we can capture these three-dimensional reflections and we can reproduce them as well. Additionally, we have object-based technology as well. Our object-based technology is, for instance, used in gaming, yeah, in binaural, yeah, as well in the new China standard which is coming up. But we use it a little bit in a different way. We use it mainly for creating interactivity. Like in the football, yeah, typically the commentary, for instance, that's like a monosource. Yeah, that's not in a kind of a space. Then as a consumer, you can decide yourself the volume of it. That's very nice because older people, they like the commentary a little bit louder. Younger people, they like more perhaps the environmental effect, yeah. But as a consumer, you can, for instance, change an easy English or Chinese or like fan club A and fan club B louder, yeah. So these are the kind of nice things from interactivity you can do with object-based technology. Yeah. Object-based technology, for instance, makes for me sense from an experience point of view when you have at least, let's say, 20 channels. Then you can do something more with object-based technology. That is our vision on Auro Max. You know, Auro Max is the ultimate cinema format. It is now just recently, it is part of the new standard for cinema. And in cinema, in a professional cinema where you have more than 20 speakers installed, yeah, there you can use, for instance, Auro Max, and there you can use object-based technology to create for us here and there more point sources, because you can already create the 3D reflections in a channel-based format. A lot of people are not aware about it, but they call our competitors' format object-based format. But the vast majority of the sound, yeah, more than typically 90% of the whole movie is channel-based. It's not object-based. Yeah. In fact, they should not call this object-based format. In fact, these three new formats are in fact hybrid formats, which means they have a channel-based part and they have an object-based part. So when people tell about Dolby Atmos or DTS:X or let's say an Auto 3D, yeah, the whole discussion about channel and object-based, in fact, not really right, yeah, because those are not object-based formats. These are, let's say, we call this hybrid formats. They have a part in channels and have as well some object-based technology, and the main difference is that our competitors, they use for the home format, they use object-based technology to add height. We don't need that. Due to our technology and the patterns around it, we can create height just channel-based, which has a lot of advantages as well in the workflow. Yeah? Now, we do not need extra bandwidth. They need extra bandwidth to add, let's say, these objects. Yeah? Suddenly, and additionally, we have as well the 3D reflections around the sources, which we can reproduce in the three-dimensional experience. The objects they have is just mono, and they don't contain these 3D reflections. Yeah? So, in fact, those formats are all hybrid formats. That means they use a part channel-based and a part object-based. Yeah? And you would be surprised. Yeah? Most of the sound is coming from channel-based formats. More than 90% typically what you hear is channel-based. So it is a little bit strange to call something like that object-based. And if they tell this is new technology, that's not true either. Object-based technology exists already from the end of the 80s. That was the first time being coming, and there were formats in the market which were like only object-based. But those let's say formats didn't succeed because of the complexity. Now, the fact that it is combined with both is not new either. Yeah? So this is not new. Of course, it is new for the consumer market, but it is absolutely not new in the professional market. Auto 3D is, of course, known first of all for the most natural sound, that quality of the experience, as well bringing the high resolution audio, as well as efficiency, yeah? As well as compatibility. Yeah? But efficiency, talk about, let's say, installing the speaker system. People ask very often, yeah, but we see Auto 9.1, Auto 10, 11.1, Auto 13.1. Yeah, but the point is, where does this come, these different formats from? That has to do, in fact, with the kind of size of a room. Like in a big theater, yeah, where you have like left, center, right on the screen, you need as well height, center, height left, height center, height right. And as well you need, of course, an overhead channel. You need that vertical stereo field around you, but you need as well an overhead channel. So there you at least have to start with Auto 11.1, 3 layers, and you can position as well the 7.1 as a basic, then you come to Auto 13.1. Now, but if you go to home, that's a completely different story, because in a home you can create easy that overhead channel as a phantom source between, let's say, the overhead, the head layer. Yeah. So for home, if you have like 5.1, and that's easy to install. Yeah. Typically, people have always place to put the 5.1. There is always place above the speakers of a 5.1. And that's where you put the second layer. Yeah? And it is that vertical stereo field all around us, just Auto 9.1. That's in the most efficient way and perfect Auro 3D. I have at home Auro 9.1, not Auro 13.1. Very often I have the question how big my room has to be to, let's say, to position the speakers. People think that, oh, we need height things. I tell you, even gamers, yeah, they have, let's say, 1 cubic meter to play their game. They have their computer of their television, and they put like very small speakers, yeah, because you do not have big speakers to create a three-dimensional sound field, yeah. Even with small speakers from like $50 each, you can create already a really very natural Auro 3D sound. Yeah? That's with speakers. I like that experience the most. But next year we're coming as well to the market with a new technology from Auro, which is from soundbars. Yeah? If you're sitting, let's say, in a specific sweet spot, you can almost virtualize the speakers. Yeah? That's what we worked on very hard with our team. And although I prefer, of course, let's say, the real thing, when air is moving all around us, our brain is sensitive, let's say, for the air coming, let's say, air movements, yeah, sound is moving air, in fact, yeah. And the big advantages, of course, with our format is as well that we have a large sweet spot, yeah. So the sweet spot of, let's say, Auro 3D is larger, let's say, than compared to our competitors' format. And in fact, that's what we try to do as well with our soundbar technology, trying to enhance the sweet spot a little bit to what is, let's say, in the market available now. We have, of course, very often that question, what about content? Yeah? Even with Auromatic, we can bring, let's say, from every kind of content this immersive experience. Yeah? Of course, people like to have as well the more native experience. Yeah? And in Europe, we have more than, let's say, in the rest. Why is this? No, it's not because Auro 3D is in European format. It's more about the footprint. Yeah? We had very fast a footprint in Europe. Yeah? Due to as well a few companies like Denon and Marantz, they're like very selling well there in that environment. Yeah? But let's say what the studios typically do is they look at the footprint and then they make the format available for it. Yeah. So if there is not enough footprint, that means, let's say, if there are not enough devices in the market, they cannot, let's say, make the cost to create, let's say, a Blu-ray for it. Yeah. And but now we are gaining very fast, much more footprint in the market. So I think very soon you will see more and more titles coming up anyway, not only for Blu-ray movies, but as well for music. Let's say in music we have more than our competitors, yeah, and that's worldwide. It's not only European music. Worldwide, you see we have more music than our competitors. And you see this movement to streaming. Yeah, we all know streaming is the future, yeah, but it is not easy to get, let's say, that same quality. We worked as well with Auro 3D on a streaming solution, and it's coming next year to the market, and it is groundbreaking as well. We are trying, in fact, it was always our goal to achieve, let's say, uncompressed audio, but bringing it in much less bandwidth. That's what we achieved as well with the Auro codec, and the Auro CX is a streaming codec which can compress up to factor 30, and it is, even for golden ears, it is not easy to hear the difference between the original uncompressed audio and the streamable content. And it has a lot of other advantages as well. You can do as well let's say, the interactivity is part of it. So it has object-based technology, it's channel-based technology. It has even scene-based technology, which is very interesting for VR. Yeah. So we worked with a team already a few years on it, and next year we are coming with that new concept on the market. You will hear about it.